Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
My good friend Caleb sent me a note. Said, Steve, check out the story about an attorney behaving badly. And I've done other stories about attorneys who've gotten in trouble, and some of them have lost their licenses and so on. And I am an attorney, so I'm licensed to practice law in Michigan, so I get chills whenever I see an attorney lose their license. But then I look at what they did, and I'm like, oh, how'd they get away with that for that long? And of course they should lose their license to do something crazy like this. So from KTLA, Will Conabear wrote this. Southern California attorney faked terminal cancer, used his client's money to fund a gambling habit. And there's more to it than just this. That's just like the tip of a very, very large iceberg. The attorney from Southern California has now been disbarred after he misappropriated more than $116,000 from his clients and used some of that money to fund his gambling habit. So apparently, while that was going on and he tried to, get away with this, he needed excuses, he said he was terminally ill with cancer. And so that was perhaps causing some of the issues that he appeared to be encountering. But he's now been disbarred after a recommendation was filed in July of this past year by a judge who said, seeing what this guy's done, he ought to be disbarred. And the attorney discipline people think so. The State Bar Courts Review Department officially ruled he should be disbarred this past June when he's found culpable of 19 ethical violations he was charged with. 19. He's from Manhattan Beach, which, by the way, is a really cool place. I've been there before. It's one of my favorite beaches in Southern California, the beach at Manhattan Beach. He cheated his clients out of their funds in part to feed his gambling habit. That's in part to feed his gambling habit. He then lied about being terminally ill with cancer to justify various delays in his work for clients. So again, some people might go, well, gee, the guy's terminally ill, but what's it got to do with what he's doing? Well, when they call him up and they can't get a hold of him and he's dodging them, when they finally do get a hold of him, he's like, yeah, I've got cancer. So he cheated his clients out of their funds in part to feed his gambling habit. He then showed no remorse and lied about having a life-threatening illness to avoid taking responsibility for his own misconduct. The chief trial counsel wrote, disbarment is entirely appropriate in this case. And so just to be clear here, the guy had to go to school, that is undergraduate. He had to go to law school, graduate, take the bar, pass character and fitness, and that's a big investment in time and money. And I don't know how long he was practicing law, other than to tell you, doesn't matter, he's done now. So all of that stuff is out the window. In their ruling, the court review department stated that the man's misappropriation of funds was unrelenting, saying he would often deplete his bank accounts and then use the money entrusted to him for his clients to do things like gambling. And he often did that as soon as he received client funds. So, I can tell you that I know when a case is settled and money's coming in and my client calls me and goes, where's my money? And I say, look, I'm waiting for it. Here's how long it's going to take, or I've got a tracking number or whatever. And this guy's waiting for the money so he can spend it. 2 specific cases were cited by the State Bar, including one in which he misappropriated $73,000 in advance fees that were supposed to be for a client's representation in a conservatorship matter. Now, you might say, but Steve, those are fees. Don't those fees get paid to him? Well, if someone gives you money and says, hey, I want you to represent me, you haven't earned the money yet. So you're supposed to take the advance fees and put them in the trust account and then pay yourself as you do the work. So they say here that he took the money and, hey, I got the money now and spent it all. And then, of course, I suspect he got caught because he didn't do the work. But in another incident, he was hired to represent a person filing a discrimination case against their employer. He never filed the case, but he provided the client with a fake case number and told them that the case had been settled for $58,000. Now, there's all kinds of things wrong with it. That's not the best laid plan right there. Because if he gives them a fake case number, they can go on the internet and probably type in the case number and see if it's real. No such case. Or it comes back to a different case, but with that number. And, I've had clients of mine say, hey, Steve, just for the fun of it, can you send me copies of everything you file? Sure. I mean, gives my secretary a little more work. And it kind of uses up some paper. But if you want a collection of legal stuff, sure, I'll send it to you. But the idea that you make up a fake case, it'd probably be just as easy to file the real case, except he'd have to do the work. Afterward, he wrote large checks to the client when he knew there was no money in the account to cover the checks. And so he bounced some checks on his client. Oops. He also failed to provide any support for his claim that he had terminal cancer and was being treated by a Dr. Chang at a local hospital. Not only was it found that the attorney wasn't undergoing treatment, there was also found that there was no Dr. Chang with the name that he used because he gave a first name also. This misconduct was exacerbated by the additional dishonesty in which he engaged. He lied to his clients to stall the discovery of his misappropriation and failure to follow through on work he had assured clients he performed. When you write someone a bad check, though, that's not going to buy you much time. Nowadays, a day, 2 days, because you deposit the check and it bounces. And by the way, anytime an attorney writes you a check that bounces, that is a very serious problem, because if he's writing you a check that supposedly came from your settlement funds, that means he had your money and then wrote you a check that bounced, which means he no longer has your money. Well, if he had it and he doesn't have it, where did it go? But here, he never had it. But again, it's just crazy. A key part of this cover-up was to issue numerous checks with insufficient funds to several clients, again, breaching the fundamental rules of ethics, which is, to be honest, honesty. Like deep down, you can sum all the rules up with just be honest. But as a result of this disbarment order, he must repay 5 former clients, what will add up to be $117,000 in restitution plus 10% interest. He had been admitted to the State Bar of California in 2017. So the first time I read this, I missed that. So he's been an attorney about 7 years. A spokesperson for the State Bar of California confirmed to KTLE that the man appealed that hearing. The California Supreme Court will then make the final determination on his disbarment. Does anybody want to take bets on whether he wins that appeal? I have a sneaky feeling that they're going to rubber stamp it. Now, I've seen situations before where somebody appealed their suspension or disbarment or whatever it is, and the Supreme Court says, you know something? We're interested in this case. Let's have some hearings. And I did a video a few years back about the worst judge ever. That's what I called her. And she wound up getting kicked off the bench, among other things. I think she went to jail for a little while, which is, again, not a good look for a judge. And they actually had hearings where they took testimony in front of the Michigan State Supreme Court. And so I've mentioned before that the state Supreme Courts are almost always who's in charge of the court system and who's allowed to practice in them. And so they get the final say in this. But if any of these allegations are correct, there's alleged to be 19 of them. 19 of them. And these aren't things that can be chalked up to simple mistakes, bookkeeping errors. Like I've heard before of a client who, I've heard before of an attorney who took money from a settlement and put it in a trust account and then cut a check to the client. And the client came back and said, hey, this check bounced. Attorney goes and looks, the money's still there, calls the bank, goes, what's going on? The bank goes, we decided to hold that money for a couple extra days because it's an out-of-state check or some nonsense. But the money was still there. The money was there. Okay? Big difference from the guys cutting bad checks where there's no money in the account. What's your excuse there? And when someone's going to come forward and say, he told me he had terminal cancer, even gave me the name of his doctor and what hospital he was in dying at, is he going to admit that he said that? Or is he going to say, oh no, all my clients are liars. Liars, all of them. Never said that, huh? So it's unfortunate because it took 19 complaints, apparently, to get this guy undone. But he is no longer practicing law, and I highly doubt that he ever will. Now, I've had people say, Steve, cops, we've talked about cops before, cops who get fired in one jurisdiction could pop up in another jurisdiction. Can't this guy go practice law someplace else? Well, the problem is that if he goes to apply for, bar license in, say, the state of Michigan, he can apply and say, I want to sit for the bar because I passed law school, I've got the JD. And they're going to go, okay. And in the character and fitness portion of what they ask you about is, have you ever practiced law anyplace else? Are you licensed to practice law anyplace else? And if you say, oh yeah, I used to be licensed in California, they're going to go, wait, what? What happened there? Oh, I got disbarred for 19 counts of misconduct. No one's going to let him in. No, he will not get let in. So he's done. The question then is, what can you do? Let's suppose you're somebody who's got a law degree, an undergraduate degree. You practiced law for 7 years, but now you're not allowed to be a lawyer. What can you do? And there are some jobs you can do. You can go work at a law firm as a clerk, a law clerk, do research and writing, and you can't go into court. Some states say you can't even interface with clients because they don't want there to be any possibility that somebody thinks you're practicing law. You can also go to work for an insurance company, for instance, and say, I want to help you in your legal department look at claims and stuff, review files. I don't know, but there are things you can do with the education, but you can't practice law, and that's the biggie. So the guy's done, and it's unfortunate that this happens because there's 19 allegations. I don't know if there's 19 different clients. Some of those may have come from the same client, but there's missing money, over $100,000. And also, when he told somebody, hey, I filed a case for you, and he didn't, well, if they have a good case, it might not be so good anymore. Statute of limitations. So there's all kinds of issues underneath the surface of this, but it's a crazy story, and I hate to see these kinds of things because I'm not sure how many attorneys there are in California, but I think there's a couple. In Michigan, there are 40,000 attorneys, almost. It's like 39 and change, if you count all of the attorneys, inactive, active, and so on, who are in good standing with the state bar. 40,000. And so every month, the back of the Bar Journal's got articles about attorneys who've been disciplined, suspended, disbarred, whatever. And you realize that, yeah, this looks really bad, but there's only 4 attorneys here, or 5 attorneys here. And 4 out of 40,000 is a very, very, very small number. But each one of these stories represents people who were harmed by people in the legal profession. And as a legal professional, I find that very disturbing. So it's one of the reasons I do stories like this. Caleb, thanks for sending it from KTLA. Will Conabear wrote that. Southern California attorney faked terminal cancer and used his client's money to fund gambling habit. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. Don't force it. Get a larger hammer.